right, so this is section 3, chapter 4, my yellow cell. I was shipped out of West Street and sent to the federal prison in Ashland, Kentucky. Now, he was supposed to get a juvenile sentence, so I don't know why he's being sent to an adult prison. By dumb luck, I ended up in a private hospital cell when I arrived at Ashland. The receiving physician's assistant, Mr. Bow, spotted lice in my hair, and I must have picked them up while I was sitting in transfer prison in Washington, Pennsylvania, on my way from New York. Wow, he's already been on a journey. Once Mr. Bow spotted the lice, he escorted me to a delousing shower room in the hospital, and I washed with a parasiticide that smelled like licorice. Afterwards, I was dusted with DDT and given clean clothes and assigned to a sunny yellow cell to relax until the lice died, and I couldn't relax. There's that color yellow again. The color of yellow the cell got to me. It was bright, smiling yellow that buzzed like a summer day. There was no hiding from that color. Like me, the yellow room had its ups and downs as the day wore on. The slightest fluctuation in the weather outside my room, the smallest passing cloud, the changing position of the sun affected the mood of that room. Color seems to have a really big impact on him and his moods, just like fiction does. And that's interesting because a lot of fiction uses color as symbolism. And my mood shifted with it. I found myself crying, laughing, numb with depression, nervous, and pacing, ambivalent, angry, and filled with self-loathing. Even when I slept, I kept the pillow over my eyes to keep the yellow from seeping through my eyelids, just as I used to keep my hand over my eyes to keep out the light when napping on the deck of the Beaver. It was a great cell as far as cells at Ashland Federal Prison went, 8 by 10 feet with a solid iron door fitted with 12-inch square safety glass peep window and a horizontal slot at the bottom for passing food trays in and out. I had a single bunk, a bedside storage locker, a toilet, a sink, and polished nickel mirror and metal chair. He was really lucky, because if he had been in the rest of the prison, it wouldn't have been good. Each was bolted to the concrete floor, and it was all mine. When I was locked in at night, I could sleep without expecting someone to sneak up and rape me or hit me or cut me. I could go to the bathroom in private, and I could sit and think in private. I also had a window to the outside. Now this is huge, because what could the window represent for him? Why would it be important? Every few minutes, I hopped up from my bunk and looked out beyond the bars at the red brick administration wing, and just beyond it to the picnic ground where family members visited, and ate lunch with minimum security prisoners and guards on break. There were trees and flower beds and pine tables covered with red and white checkered tablecloths. It was green and peaceful outside the window, so green is representative of peace for him, and a break from the unrelenting yellow of my cell, which was like having the unblinking eye of the sun blazing in on me each day, reminding me that prison was not the dark place where I could hide from my past. Ooh, this is powerful. So yellow is reminding him he can't hide from his past, and definitely not the place where I could hide from myself. Even at night, there was no relief from that color. So maybe that's why he hated the color yellow, because it just reminded him that he can't hide from the reality of his life. At sundown, the naked bulbs overhead came on, and beneath it, I'd slump into a drama of my own self-interrogation. There was nothing else to do but beat myself up. The first week, I had no books, no writing papers and pencil, no radio, no one to speak to, no cigarettes, no alcohol, no drugs, just me sitting on the edge of my bunk, slowly grilling myself under the yellow light. At first, I pointed the finger at everybody else. I think this is normal, right? My family, my friends, the gang of backstabbers that I worked with in the smuggling ring. I burned them all on a bonfire of blame, but that didn't give me any relief. Had someone else been responsible for what I had done, I suppose my blaming them would have satisfied me. But it didn't, so I threw myself on the fire and went up like gasoline. I smuggled the hash, I took the money, I hurt my family. No fire rages like guilt. Wow, what a powerful line. That would be a great hook for someone's story. 6 times a day, like every other prisoner, I was counted at my bed. Each morning before breakfast, the guard in front office clicked in the intercom system. From the loudspeaker on my floor, I could hear his amplified breath. Then he'd sniff. Finally, he'd call, "Count," and from the loudspeaker in every hallway, every dormitory, every work facility on the outside of the building, from atop the guard towers and the telephone poles located through the grounds, I could hear the echo of that count. Next, I could hear the hospital guard's leather shoes tapping across the polished linoleum floor as he briskly walked by my peeps by my peep window. I stood next to my bed and yelled back, "In," and he passed every other occupied hospital cell, and the man inside stood next to his bed and yelled, "In." I was in. I was counted in. After breakfast, I was counted. Before dinner, I was counted. After dinner, before the lights out, then while I slept, and even then, I turned the phrase over and over in my mind, "Count me in." Those were the 3 words I'd take back if I could. They were the words to Rick and Hamilton. They were my words to Rick and Hamilton. Count me in. So he's saying, like, those were the exact words he happened to use, ironically, in a sick twist of irony, dramatic irony, that he said, "Count me in on this job to do this," and now he's being counted in prison. Now I was counted in every cell, every day, and I was counted on to be there morning, noon, and night. Without books, I began to read the walls, like a blind man reading Braille. I traced my fingers over the graffiti scratched into the concrete blocks. I puzzled out the names and the words, dates and shapes, and I imagined the lives of the men who lived there before me, just as I had done in my old ex-prison high school. The coincidence of that connection made me laugh, and I think it was the first good laugh I had had behind bars. I never would have guessed that the visit from the prison alumni I laughed at in high school had been an omen of my future. So that was some serious foreshadowing there. Then I found the best line scratched above the mirror. "What we have here is a failure to communicate." Now that is a line. That line is from Cool Hand Luke, and it was all for me, whether I was talking to myself or to someone else. Some wit had carved it into the cinder block so that each time he looked in the mirror, he reminded himself that the biggest failure in his life is self-communication. And I think we've been talking about this week. If you don't talk to yourself, if you don't check in with yourself, you will make mistakes because you have to figure out where your moral compass is and where you're comfortable. After my first few days, the food service workers who had been delivering the special hospital meals took pity on me, bouncing off my yellow walls like crickets trapped in a box, and he brought me some books, a pad of paper, envelopes, and a pencil. "Do whatever you want with the books," he said. "They were left in the cafeteria. The paper is regulation for writing letters home, and when you finish one, give it to a floor guard. Keep in mind that they read it before sending it out, and whoever gets it won't miss the U.S. Department of Corrections stamp on the envelope. You'll have to sharpen that pencil with your teeth." Ew, that's a terrible thought. "Thanks," I said. I looked over the books. There was Zane Grey, cowboy novel, an autobiography of Christine Jorgensen, who was the first man to have a sex change. I thought that was odd. And The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. I stacked them on the locker, and I sat down on the bed with the pad and pencil. The first thing I did was write the judge and ask him to reduce my sentence of time served. I told him I had lice. I had fully realized my mistakes and had been scared straight. I addressed the letter to my lawyer and I asked him to forward it to the judge. It was a long shot to send a jailhouse appeal, but from where I was sitting, I had nothing to play but long shots. And again, we are really seeing that Jack actually feels reality now. Now he's not living in fictional world. He knows that like his actions have weight and that a book is not going to save him. But it's also an escape from his reality at the moment, and he needs that. Dostoevsky, who had spent some time in prison, he wrote about In the House of Dead, and I guess knowing that only encouraged me to use Karamazov for my journal. I read the book first, then I began to record my own lines between his lines. Naturally, his were better, but mine were mine, and it didn't take me long to find out I had plenty to write about. I set the journal up differently than I had my others. On each page, I started writing between the lines and then broke out and wrote all crazy around the margins and every which way I could find some place so that it was all jumbled up. I tossed in everything I saw and I thought and felt during the day and wrapped it all up in the book quotes and prison slang and bits of wild conversation and anything I thought was interesting. I didn't keep up my old habit of writing down my ideas for novels because it seemed unnecessary. I felt as if all the fictional ideas I cooked up were nothing compared to what was going on in real life around me. I was reading when 3 black guys from the Muslim Brotherhood knocked on my door. They were very well groomed. Their nails were shown, their skin glowed, and the hair beneath their elaborately crocheted skull caps looked drawn in with a Conti crayon. "Excuse me, brother," one of them said from the other side of the glass. I looked up from my bunk and then turned away. "Excuse me," he said again and rapped the glass with his knuckles. "We'd like to make a brief offer towards improving race relations." I'm not in on race-related charges, I replied. I don't have those problems. Well, that's wonderful, he replied in an unctuous voice. Unctuous means like slimy, greasy, and kind of like sketchy. Because we have an offer for you. What? I asked. Even though I really didn't want to know, more than ever, the races needed to trust each other, and I want to offer you an opportunity to enter the circle of trust between the black man and the white man. Trust was a touchy subject for me, and at present, I didn't have any in anyone, no matter what the issue. So here's our offer, he said. Every Sunday is movie night up in the gym. During the movie, the Muslim brothers all gather in the bathroom for a little prayer meeting. What we would like for you, once you are released into population, is for you to join us in a ceremony of trust. Come meet the brothers, and then we will want to pull your pants down around your knees and bend over. I didn't say anything. I could hardly believe I heard him correctly. It's all about trust, he said, reminding me again of the larger point. You see, by not fucking you when you are the most vulnerable, you'll realize that you can trust us, and we will trust you because you took a chance on our behalf. So what do you say? When you enter population, will you meet us in the bathroom? The meeting will only take a minute. I'm sorry, I said, trying hard to sound practical, but I don't go to movies. This is the golden opportunity, he said. We don't offer this to everybody, only a select few whom we believe can handle this type of trust. Well, no thank you, I said. It's a wonderful offer, but I have other plans. Well, he said, when your schedule permits, just let us know and we'll make a date. That moment, the loudspeaker was flipped on and the rotunda guard hollered, "Count." They turned and marched off. After the count was cleared, I flipped open my journal and wrote down everything that had just happened. Nobody would believe it. I couldn't. That's why I had to write it down. After a week with the physician's assistant, opened my cell. He was a big man with a head as wide as his shoulders. It made him look like a smiling toad, and I liked him. I liked anyone who didn't look mean or dangerous. Let's see if that lice has had enough DDT, he said, and I stripped down and he checked me from top to bottom. Then he ran a fine-tooth comb through my hair. We have to be careful once we get an epidemic of lice or crab or scabies. It's near impossible to get rid of them. I guess so, I said, trying to keep up my end of the conversation. Yeah, he continued, I think these lice are cooked and you're ready to be sent down to general population. I didn't want to go into population, not after what I had seen happen to Lucas in West Street and what I imagined was waiting for me in Ashland. You know, I said, I once did some volunteer work in a hospital. Do you need any workers? Now, this is like one part luck and one part ingenuity on Jack's part, but then I think this adult sees the fear in this child, and I think we have hope here. Funny you should ask, he replied. My x-ray tech only just flipped out and tried to climb over the fence. He looked out my window and pointed the spot. I mean, that kid just snapped. Broad daylight, he runs from the dormitory out across the yard and starts to climb. And of course, they spotted him right away, told him to come down, but he wouldn't. So they had to jerk him down with something like a gaff hook, and now he's locked in isolation with a couple of broken ribs. Sounds pretty rough, I said as I got dressed. Would you like the job as an x-ray tech, he asked. You could live up here and be part of the hospital staff. That would suit me just fine, I said, and just like that, I fell into the best job in the prison. I got to keep a private cell. The medical staff trained me to use the x-ray machine and developed the film, and from then on, I was always the first one to call to x-ray men who were injured during the night, especially those who lived in the 120-man dormitories, where once the lights were turned off, you could stealthily roam from bunk to bunk and settle a score with anyone. And they did. Nightly, it seemed to me. I learned how to stitch up wounds. I practiced on chicken parts, properly apply tourniquets, tweeze shattered glass out of gashes, wash out eyes that had been burned with bathroom cleaners, pop dislocated bones back into joints, and perform an assortment of other triage skills. It was a good job, and it allowed me to see the results of the rough action in the prison without having to be directly involved. Still, I knew I had to keep my guard up.